Well, hello, my beautiful people, and it's time for part 4. Now, let's in this video we're going to cover relations between the church and Tepe, Gobeckli Tepe, and I think there is some continuity of ritual. These are all just different chapels for different ceremonies, different saints. You will notice the haphazard nature of what I call the annus in this particular chapel here. Because they are they're haphazardly done. That can only be for celestial alignments and for holy days, etc. Which would make a lot of sense. Also, the sun doesn't track in the sky at the same rate all year round. There is an acceleration of time after sunset and before sunrise as we approach the summertime, as we get towards the equinox. And that is quite apparent. People know about that. Here, it kind of does represent what creation says in the Bible. It says there was just water and there was no land yet. So you just have the two pillars, and I presume there's just a bunch of water in here, which can only mean it's showing the waters of creation and used for baptism. I imagine for baptisms. Like, why else? Why else would that be used? Which is interesting. Now, because it is a dome. It is a dome because these are annuals, annus, so they must be months. So this must be for the year, but these are taller than these, so it is dome-like, isn't it? And these are in churches, aren't they? So here's the problem. The church seems to be a continuation of this in some form. And when you think about it, the churches can't be completely different from thousands of years of European tradition. There's got to be something about them that's the same. And what I'm seeing is there's actually a lot the same, a great deal. So let's get into it. Okay, so firstly, I just a preliminary note, because there were a few trolls saying this and that. You know, they're saying like my ego's too big or something. I'm just sharing my research with people. I know that there's no such thing as recognition, even if you're Einstein or whatever. Most of the time, you're just isolated. There's no such thing as recognition. Thomas Edison, he was freezing in a laboratory in Michigan for most of his life. There's no recognition for anyone. I'm just researching, sharing a bit of research. Jealous people come on and think I'm getting something from doing. I'm not getting anything from this. I'm wasting time. I could be making millions of dollars if I wasn't doing this. So those people, I have to block them because I don't. They're very simple. I don't talk to simple people, unfortunately. I choose who I talk to, and so should everyone. So let's get to it. So we have these are like different chapels, as in let's compare it to churches. This Gobeckli and Karahan have different chapels, just like churches. Catholic churches have different chapels for different saints, but kind of the same ceremonies in each one. Now we see quite clearly here that this chapel will be for alignments. Like there's one like a triple God alignment there. There's another triple God alignment there. It's as if it's measuring something in the sky, perhaps stars, between this very narrow focus. It's almost like an observatory in a way, hence it's on a mountain. And this one is more for just the year because they're more equidistant annus, as we call them, annuals. Now, the church is a water-based religion, showing me that church worship is actually cup worship. And I have suggested that the word cup, the word kitchen, kuchnia in Polish, the word or cuisine or whatever you want to call it, it's all based on the word cup. Because it's a water religion. And if it's a water religion, it must be an earth religion. Because the earth and the water god are often the same in the Near Eastern religions. They're the same thing. And often also the same with the moon god. In other words, this can only be for worshipping the earth. And that is clearly the case. This is a hemisphere. And if that is the case, then our churches which descend from this must also be based around worshipping the earth, as the pyramid religion was. And I think we can make the case for that as well. There is a ton of earth worship in the Bible, left over from the pyramid religion. We've covered that in regarding days of creation in Genesis. It's based around the earth forming. It's not based around... It's everything to do with us and the earth as part of the earth's system. And it's not based on anything else. The earth is the sacred thing that's manifesting, even building itself, but based on an unknown power. By the way, the double enclosure there does remind me, and it dips into a double enclosure. Where have you seen that? Basically the fairy rings in Ireland. Basically in Ireland there's a tradition, you step into one of these. It doesn't have this stuff in the middle, but it's got that double wall. And they're saying, well, it doesn't seem to be defensive because it seems a bit vulnerable. It's sort of inset double ring. What's it for? And it could be a continuation. And they say, don't go to these rings or it'll ruin your life. Anyway, but they're lovely places. They're quite nice. Okay, let's continue. And I want the measurements. I want more excavated so I can see the measurements, because I've noticed there's a lot of imperial. I've noticed some imperial already at Gobeckli Tepe, which means this is not the start of civilization. And to build the imperial system, wow. And this is something no one knows about, no one covers, because no one appreciates, or very few appreciate, how incredible the imperial system actually is. Will be in an upcoming book if I ever get around to it. Right, so the church, what's the point of a mass? The point of a mass, well, let's look at what it has. It has a cross, which we know is Proto-Christian. It has candles, so there's got to be some fire, because fire is magic, right? We know the cup is worshipped and the Eucharist is worshipped by the priest. But there's something else that nobody really mentions that much. The dome, the time. The dome is highly, highly esteemed, highly worshipped. Because the dome is the focus of so many especially early Christian crosses. You look at Hagia Sophia, the whole thing is based around the dome. It's like a new pantheon, but for Christians. The Pantheon, obviously, was the best of temples. So the dome was what the Romans really wanted to worship above everything else. The dome was sacred. And because it's Pantheon, you've got to put everything in there. So there's all these people in here, and we don't even really know. These are probably Byzantine officials, but we don't really know who they are. As if they're holy, as if they're saints. And it's the same in the Holy Roman Empire. They copied this. They did the same thing. This is Trieste Cathedral in Italy. And it's a kind of trinity, because the three women, you see straight away. And look, there's even more faces up there. It's lots of gods. It is a new pantheon. And this is almost Islamic, but it's not, is it? It's Christian. So that's quite interesting as well. Okay, let's continue. Oh, that's the other side of it. So you can see straight away, if this was in Germany, they'd call it a Charlemagne thing. I think there's one in Dortmund, I remember, and similar to Aachen as well. That big thing there it looks like the earth or the sun. So you've got a lot more going on in here in the early Christian churches than you have in the that's better. In the later Christian churches. You got a lot more pagan stuff, you could call it. This looks almost the same in the Charlemagne churches in Germany. The layout, the structure, obviously the heavens up here. It's all about, it is kind of a dome worship, isn't it? Like Gobeckli Tepe. And it's domes upon domes for other chapels. Oh, yes. Oh, so there's lots of chapels, lots of domes, arches. Every arch is kind of like a dome venerating the heavens, decorated as if you're looking at the heavens. So all for the supreme sky god. Now, I've written some notes here. So let's compare churches to Tepe. So churches have stations of the cross. Apparently it evolved before this was built, around the 4th century. Everything about Christianity seems to have evolved in the 4th century. The reason is it was no longer persecuted, so they could standardise it. But how far back does it really go? Whereas churches have Stations of the Cross, Tepe has T-pillars. Churches have chapels for saints. Tepe has also many chapels. You'd think I could read my own writing. The purpose of the priest at Tepe would presumably face away from the audience as in a Christian mass, because earlier a Vatican I Christian mass, because he would be in the centre, and he's not the focus. The focus are the gods around him that he's standing next to. Notice where the priest is. He's standing in the circular arena, so it's a continuation of or similar to Stonehenge, and similar to Tepe. And then you've got the audience well away outside of this circular arena, which represents the earth. It's circular because it is representing the sky and the earth and the movement of the earth. So it's earth worship in a way, or sun worship. So there's a lot of earth worship going on in churches. Aachen Cathedral, I was blessed to be here, and I touched Charlemagne's throne, and as you see, it is another kind of pantheon, pan everything, because they've put as many people there as they can. Apparently, these are the Holy Roman Emperors. They're all standing up there in heaven. And you have the four sides of the pyramid. It's similar to the pyramid religion, the dome religion, and the mound religion in Europe. Instead of building an earth mound, you start building domes instead, because a dome is another way of representing that pyramid, that earth. So when we start to analyse it, I believe we will discover that some medieval churches do have earth-like dimensions like the Great Pyramid, but I haven't got time for that. Now, Tepe is clearly an abyss, like the deep waters. Each temple is an abyss like the deep waters of the Bible. So where is the waters under the dome? Where is that? Okay. So I thought, well, hang on, what about the baptismal? Yes, so I asked a question, and it says here, yes, the baptismal fonts are located under the dome. So it's a continuation of Tepe. You have the waters under the dome. And the domes often feature mosaics depicting the baptism of Jesus. For example, the Arian baptistry in Ravenna has the mosaic of Jesus' baptism in its dome, and the baptistry of Pisa has a double dome with unique acoustics. Many baptistries are designed with the dome's imagery and the baptismal font as central elements, with the dome's reflection potentially visible in the water of the font. In other words, that dome and the baptismal go together. So there is supposed to be a sacred lake under the dome. And that continues into our cathedrals and churches. So this is something from the early book of Genesis. This is basically Old Testament in the churches. The Old Testament has designed the churches, not the New Testament. If the New Testament had designed the churches, I suppose it might be something like a bacchanalia or something. I don't know what it would look like. It might be a Mithraic ritual or something, which is another type of mass, another type of eating based on officers' mess. That's where the word's from, clearly to me. Just incredible. But obviously, that means this is earth worship. That means the church is based around the worship of the earth as a god. The earth is the god. And of course, the Stations of the Cross, apparently from the 4th century, later reintroduced, but it goes all the way back, because the official explanation is that people wanted to feel like how it was to go, Jesus to stop 14 times on the way to Golgotha. Okay. That would have to be the first time in human history that public input is changing what's inside a church, which is usually always based on some ancient tradition that nobody can understand. So I think what's actually happening here is these Stations of the Cross were actually supposed to be in a more round form of the church, a dome. These were supposed to be alignments to certain phenomena. And they then Christianized these alignments into crosses which they put around the walls of the church. And then instead of saying they have Christianized these alignments because that would be an admission of guilt, they say, oh, we've put these in because these are Jesus's actions on the way to Golgotha. And it didn't have to be 14 stations. There were different numbers of them. Churches also, by the way, they're laid out like a ley line. They're laid out like a cross in the landscape, which is really interesting as well. It's like a ley, and I imagine many churches would be at the centre of ley lines, which cross the landscape. We're not finished. You think I'm done? It gets worse, guys. It gets worse. I'll show you. Yeah, it gets worse. It gets worse. Who is Jesus? Jesus is the same as God. Right, okay. Well, that has implications because that means he's the same as the highest God, which in the old Near Eastern pantheon is Anu, which is Janus, which is the two-faced. So there's one face on one side, one face on the other side. And thing is, the Anu is depicted as naked like Jesus on the cross. Because he's only got the loincloth it's what it is. It's like an animal skin, like a pelt. That's how it's shaped, which is very interesting. There it is, you see. So that means this figure must be naked, like Jesus on the cross, and it is shaped like a cross. Now, Jesus is worshipped. The main way Jesus is worshipped is being on the cross. In other words, that is not because people are worshipping a tortured device. That is because the cross is holy. But we don't know why the cross is holy because it goes back such a damn long way. It was some kind of magical ritual to make a cross. And but if Jesus is depicted as on the cross, that means he's part of the cross. He's not Jesus unless if he doesn't have the cross, he's not Jesus. So here we have a cross, but it's also a person, and it's a naked person, and he's got long, spindly, weird arms like those Aboriginal figures in Australia. And the arms might actually be because there's some kind of beveling here, the arms might be holding two staffs like the staff god as well, which I find interesting. I've just noticed that now. Most fascinating. Some kind of a belt. Spindly arms, no face because God doesn't have a face. He's just got one face on each side. So Jesus, instead of having one face on each side, he has one criminal on each side. So they had to explain that as a criminal on each side. So yeah, they just Christianize everything to make it sound good, to make it sound acceptable, so people don't ask too many tricky questions because nobody likes people who ask questions. You know the film noir? You're asking too many questions. He asks too many questions. He talks too much. You see? It's that, right? Very interesting here. Okay. So it seems to be naked except for an animal skin over the genitals, and it's a cross. So it's a cross and it's a person at the same time. So it's Issa and Anu at the same time in some ways. I told you it got worse. You didn't believe me, but now you see. Now you believe me. The T-pillars are people, they're Anu, but in some ways they're also Proto-Issa, going month to month. Hence the stations of the cross, because this bloke is repeated again and again and again in the circular temple, going from one stop to the next. It's really the stations in the sky, isn't it? Right. Yeah, right. So I thought, what is that? Is it a tadpole? Is it a sperm? It's probably a cobra. And you know that the baby Heracles strangled two snakes which were introduced into his cot. But here we have this in the in this particular religion. Also, the way his arms are shaped, it suggests something else in that location of the anatomy. But I'm not going to talk about that. But you see, and this makes me think, like, okay, if churches are based on Gobeckli Tepe, which they are, I've demonstrated that. If Stonehenge is, which it is, I've demonstrated that. Is this really 10,000 BC, or are we looking at something more recent? More like 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. There was a catastrophe in 3,000 BC. And human history begins at that time, because something happened just before it. Okay, it's a bit fuzzy, but that's the famous JJ standing at, basically to whether it's a reproduction or the actual thing. And there are about 5 of her in height. And that's why I noticed at Stonehenge in England, which is supposedly, about 2000 BC or 2500 BC. I noticed that the central trilithons were about 5 of me in height. They're massive things. They have to be massive to show that they're kind of holding up the sky. And they're domed as well, because it's a horseshoe shaped. So it's like the dome on a church. It is. Stuckley thought it was a proto-cathedral. That's why he became interested in Christianity and became a priest, William Stuckley. Because he thought, okay, I'm continuing the Stonehenge religion, the Druid religion. Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Well, I think we've demonstrated, I think we made our point. All right, so there we go. Don't need these notes anymore. There we go. Yeah.